Hello, everybody, and welcome to the spoiler review for Succession Kill List. I love that term. I've always loved that term. God help me. But we are going to jump into it and dive into this thing deep and do a spoiler review for this latest episode of Succession here on the Outlaw Nation. I'm the Outlaw John Rocha, joined as always by my own Roman Roy here, Shannon McClung. How are you, Shannon?
You think I'm like Roman?
I'm just saying you're a little bit smaller, you're on point, and I think, and you don't really give your feelings away too often. But I think if somebody fucked around and misspoke about your father, you would actually blow up on a Norwegian guy pissing on the rocks. I feel like you would do that.
Well, a Swede who happens to be in Norway.
No, Swede, yes.
A Swede on a Norwegian mountain.
Yes, the two S's, that gives it away, Swede. You're right. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, holy crap. What a fantastic episode. And, I know we're going to talk about everything, but I don't know if I've ever heard a more cutting language to be unknowingly belittled in Swedish. I mean, Oscar doesn't get a ton to do, but when he's there, that guy is fantastic.
Yeah. Those are usually the worst guys to be around too. The ones that don't say too much, don't come around too often, but when they do, they absolutely devastate you. Roll on back and have a fucking waffle on the way back to the cabin. It's the worst. But yeah, this episode was very much focused on the deal with Gojo. Is this going to happen? And certainly the battles that went on both before they got to Norway, when they got to Norway, and then at the end here with that incredible scene between Roman and Matsson there on the Norwegian rock side or hillside there, mountainside rather, and everything went down in between. Fantastic stuff. We got some Tom and Shiv stuff that really walked that line. Shannon, I had an involuntary reaction when he flicked her ear. I was like, what are you fucking doing? Like, it just was incredible. Greg trying to create something called the Quad Squad in a desperate attempt to be part of it. Tom groveling from person to person, working the room. Who's got the power? I must be friends with whoever has the power to keep my job. The Grays there trying to figure things out. And then the boys negotiating for the first time with Shiv kind of as backup there as well with Matsson. So there was a lot in this episode, and we're going to spoiler review it. So just let you know now. I know we blew the stuff already if you haven't watched the episode, because this is a big time warning. We are spoiling it. So if you haven't watched it, go and watch it. Come on back.
And Hugo versus downhill skier.
Hugo, who Fisher Stevens, a diminutive guy, but with one of the biggest plates from a buffet that I've ever seen in my creation. Now, I haven't seen that since the Old Country Buffet in Burbank. So your thoughts on this overall episode of Succession?
I mean, again, this is just another banger episode, and really getting to see are the Roy children ready to play at this level? And based off of that first meeting, no, they are not. I mean, watching them just get pushed around by Matsson. I mean, again, it's so enjoyable. And I always try to watch the episode a second time with the subtitles on, because I'm like, I know there's stuff that I'm missing.
Right.
And just watching the way the whole thing plays out, I mean, it's just how Frank and Carl just have no need to play the game. They're like, yeah, if you want to go sweat it out with the Swedes in the hot box, have at it. We're going to sit out here in our robes. Just so enjoyable. Again, the writing, the directing, the acting, another killer performance from KIERAN CULKIN. I mean, I do think he's the one coming out of this definitely with a nomination. Sarah Snook probably is going to get one as well. Wouldn't surprise me if Jeremy Strong gets one as well. Maybe even Alexander Skarsgård in the best guest performance, because that guy, I mean, the guy is just a tower. Like, he's just so big, and he's so handsome, but he's so borderline psychotic to me. It's like, at any point, this guy, he's definitely killed someone in the past. This character.
If he's given away his blood, he's certainly taken blood from somebody at knife point or something. I agree with you 100%. Yes.
Yeah, he's definitely kill list. He definitely has one in the ledger.
Yeah. Him and Oscar probably together. I wouldn't be surprised. Then giggled about it over beers later. I would not with Lowenbrow or whatever. But yeah, I mean, the director here, ANDRIJ PAREKH, I want to give a special credit to. Just a fantastic director. He's directed 5 episodes of Succession so far. He's got another one coming on later in this year, so we'll have 6 total in the series. And I think every one of his episodes have been fantastic. And look, if your last episode was good, right? But this one is really kind of, okay, we're back on course. After the death of Logan, now we're back on course. We really see what's going on here. And you're right. SKARAGÅRD delivered a wonderful performance here and just needling the guys about their father, constantly belittling them. And that's a negotiation tactic. That's like, man, when you're dancing at this level, every little thing carries weight. You know, how can you embarrass them? How can you push them? And you could argue that Roman Roy's honesty in that moment, the willingness to bring the entire force of the Roy Empire versus Matsson, is what ended up driving the price to 192. But is that going to keep? Is that going to be the way that they go down? Is this more of the negotiation? Especially because Matsson asked Shiv, now having established a bit of a connection with Shiv after that conversation about Ebba and everything down there, and him saying how he likes her because she tells her truth, she's liking dad, all this kind of stuff. Then you see him ask her to send him pictures of the faces of the guys. That to me doesn't feel like a 192 is going to stay 192, but I don't know. What do you think, Shannon? After all this, is the deal going to happen, or is this going to be a back and forth over the next 5 episodes?
I mean, my guess is it's going to be a back and forth. Looking at the, the coming next week preview.
Oh yeah.
It certainly seems like Kendall, who knows what Kendall is planning in that theater. And even Shiv said, like, he is a wild card. Like, we don't know what he is going to get up there and say. But mostly, I mean, even Kendall recognized Matsson's tactics as like, this is fucked up. Like, what, adding ATN back in the deal, that's an emotive choice. But watching the way that Roman just went at him, both barrels, just fully blazing. I honestly think this goes on for the rest of the season because in the absence of Logan, they have found a very good antagonist in Lucas Matsson. And watching them go back and forth, because again, it doesn't seem like those papers are signed yet. Anything could happen.
I feel like Oscar's going to come in and mess the deal up in some way as well. So who knows with all of this? Shannon, I want to ask you something. Have you ever gotten... Did you audition for Callis Patron Hibernation? Did you audition for this film? Did you get a shot to be a part of this film that has a fucking robot, sleepy robot in a cave? What did you think?
Well, Johnny, when you're auditioning for these types of big franchises like this, you rarely know what it is you're auditioning for right off the bat. I got to audition for Captain Marvel, and that was certainly not that's not how it was advertised. I was able to extrapolate what I was eventually reading for. I also got to audition for Agent Carter, and then breaking down the code words of I'm like, all right, I can see that Harry Smith is Howard Stark. Like, you're just using the same initials.
I think I know where I'm going on this. But no, let's talk about this overall, Shannon, because the whole episode was basically about if this deal is going to happen or not going to happen in Norway. So let's deal with everything before Norway. Remember, this season, every day is a day. It's the next day every episode. So that's how you got to look at this season, which is really an interesting way to kind of close out this series. But now we're 2 days after the death of Logan Roy. We see Roman coming in, getting Kendall coming in, getting the claps, getting the love. Hugo is there. They've got new assistants who are supposed to help them transition. Roman's already there with his team. They come in and have a conversation about the deals. Apparently, Kendall has been sending Roman a crap ton of emails. They call for Shiv. The Grays come in and give their 2 cents. Jerry, Carl, and Frank there. And then Shiv comes in and they have conversations about how they want to approach things. They get on the plane and we see Tom and Greg and oh my God, the fucking Laurel and Hardy of this entire series. Tom and Greg there having their conversations, their negotiations, and Greg with the ridiculous thing about all the ladies he's going to sleep with there in Norway, but whatever. We get on the plane and then we get more here on the plane about how they want to negotiate, what method. Shiv's trying to kind of talk to them about it, and they're like, we're wrestling with an ogre. And then she calls him out and says, you're reading emails, calm down. And then they get to the place and they're Roman and Kendall are talking about how small their places are. They're looking at everything and trying to find the insult, trying to find the denigration to understand where Matsson's position is on all of this. And so let's deal with that. How did you think about how they introed everything with the kids, with the Grays, and then when they got there eventually, what the back and forth was like all around?
Well, I mean, especially the beginning, that really mirrors the first episode when we initially meet Kendall and he's being driven to work. I mean, it
Yes.
is a very, very similar setup. Um, And you think about all the times that Logan Roy would arrive at Roystar Waco, and as he would exit his car with Colin by his side, how people would just rush him.
Yeah.
And Kendall gets out, and he's alone. Like no one's rushing up to him right now. But watching him sort of enter the building, Hugo, kind of prepping the landing for him. As he walks in, you see that look over to his dad's office,
Yes.
and
The empty
that's
chair. Yeah.
that's the first time he's been there when his dad hasn't been in that room.
Great
And I
point.
think, really subtle, but really, really great work from Jeremy Strong when you see when you're confronted with a moment like that, like what, because remember, as you said, this happened 2 days ago.
Yeah.
2 days ago, their dad died, and now they're kind of back at it. Love to see that for the most part, the kids are all getting along. Like, they come in, they have a handshake, they have a hug. You already see that Shiv is not actively being boxed out, but she's not actively being included.
Yeah. Yeah.
How she's the last, they do ask, where's Shiv? But she is the last one to enter. It seems like she didn't know about this meeting. She didn't know about this, kind of get together.
Right.
But then watching as they get on the plane, yes, Greg and his wanting to get with Scandinavian hotties, and Hugo and the two recurring players who I want to say it's Mark and I can't remember the other. I want to say maybe Ross.
Okay.
But guys that I had to look up. I'm like, I recognize these guys, but I don't know them well enough. And they both have been in several episodes throughout the season. But you see Hugo and these guys letting Greg know, along with Tom, like this is not a fun trip. Like this is they're trying to figure out who are they going to cut and who are they going to keep. And you find out on the plane. Yeah. Yep, who's on the kill list? They find out on the plane that Gojo, bought a video game company, and they kept less than 10% of that staff. So you get the dire situation that a lot of these folks are being put in. So yeah, just really, really great setup. Having Kendall and Rome say to Shiv, like, hey, we can cut Tom's throat here. Like we can, if you want, we can get him out. And then not even realizing that Tom is literally on the other side of that wall. When they arrive,
not wanting to do it either. That's kind of an interesting character beat for her. Yeah.
Not jumping on it right away. So you see that there is still, despite the fact that there was this enormous betrayal, that there still is that kernel of love and affection. When they arrive, the interesting thing about Succession, like from season 1, is the fact that how much they travel for shooting. Now, a lot of times if you're dealing with a network, like a network drama that maybe shoots in LA, maybe shoots in New York, maybe shoots in Vancouver, you're not going anywhere. You're going on to redress sets. You're trying to find spots in the city where you can shoot on location that bear sort of a passing resemblance to where the scene is supposed to be located. They're actually going to these places. And is it necessary for the dramatic narrative? You could argue no, but it really puts you there. I mean, you watch as they're taking these SUVs up this enormous, beautiful mountain. It just really sets the scene. It really sets the reality for what the characters are doing. I mean, despite the fact that the cinematography is absolutely gorgeous. Like, how many times do we need to see them get on helicopters? Like, do we need to see that? No. Helicopters are expensive.
Good point.
But it just adds a layer of reality that puts you deeper, that puts the audience deeper into that story.
Yeah, for sure. And we get to see the different points of views from everybody, because clearly Carl and Frank are just like, whenever you cut up the pie, we just want a piece of our pie because we're looking at. But Jerry going a little bit MAGA here on the plane, being like, oh, they're Europeans, they're soft, they've been sitting around having boiled eggs or whatever. Like, she just kind of undercut without realizing that, Europe has been around way longer than America. They've been negotiating stuff way longer than America, but this perception of Europeans as soft with their universal health care and crap, I think was really funny and a nice, interesting new angle to throw in with Jerry, and maybe why her and Logan have gotten along for so long and she's been able to survive cuts and his whims for so long in the company. So just interesting stuff to get a window into this. And yeah, you mentioned the Shiv stuff as well. That's something. But the only reason they're going to Norway is because Matsson is the one making them go, saying there was a retreat. It was already kind of scheduled. We got to go here for cultural compatibility, which I think is a great shield, which Roman calls him out on later on, which we'll get to here in a little bit as well. But I love the moment of Tom watching Carl and Frank change socks on the flight. I think those are those little character moments, those little funny moments that are real, yet they're perfect in the show to keep the balance of the tension, so you're not too deep into the drama. You've got a little of the weirdness and the realness of stuff, and I love that they threw that in there. But
and also, if I could jump in real quick, Johnny, the moment where Carl, it's not just the fact that he's changing his socks. Carl has his foot on the table.
Yes, he does.
And is that something he would have done when Logan was in the next room?
Great point. Right, probably. I'm 100% not would have put it on the table. All I can think of is John Candy taking his socks off on the plane in planes, trains, and automobiles because his dogs were barking. But Shiv mentions all the pieces also here, Shannon, that are kind of undercutting her father and elevating the boys. And she basically wants to know, and she'll do this another time later on in the episode. She basically wants to know who is leaking this information. And we know from last episode that it's fucking Roman doing it with Hugo. So clearly,
Kendall.
Oh, sorry, Kendall. God, Kendall with Hugo, yes. And he is the one kind of driving this. And I think she suspects it, but she just wants to hear him say it. Remember, they're all dealing with trauma of the death of their father. So not really thinking straight, not ready to kind of go at people just yet fully. But I think she's figuring it out that it's someone high up, and it probably is Kendall. And I love that Hugo puts a button on this scene on the plane by saying, "We're snakes on a plane." It's just great reference there. But they head to the deal. We head to Norway. They get into the situation here. They go to their, as I mentioned, they go to their respective cabins. We go to this brunch. Oscar and Tom of Shoban. I love that way that Oscar does that when he greets Tom like he's a Game of Thrones guy. And Tom is already selling out the company by kissing Oscar's ass and is, "Hey, I can show you all the deadwood as well as the big trees here." Of course, Deadwood, nice HBO reference to a great Western show as well. But Hugo has the biggest plate of food at the buffet, butters up Andreas Block by immediately undercutting the fact that he didn't win a bronze at the Olympics there. Caroline and Ebba talk, which I think is kind of interesting. It's like that moment in Seinfeld when Elaine found the alternate George, Jerry, and Kramer. Ebba is essentially the alternate Caroline for that, the Norwegian Carolina rather. That's what she is. So it was interesting to see them make and then they meet with Matsson. The kids meet with Matsson. We have that trip up there and they're back and forth with the Grays about how much it's 144 and all of that. But they meet with Matsson, and Matsson immediately is like prodding them. He's like, "Oh, hey, I'm I'm undermanned. You guys, I'm just messing with you. Let's go talk." And they go and talk, and you can see that Matsson is just toying with them a little bit. And Kendall's not sure what to do because he's got a very serious face on, and he's trying to be, "I'm a serious person. I can handle this." Roman is kind of riding the waves a little bit of what's happening here. And then he proposes what he proposes, and he wants ATN in the deal. Matsson also shares the fact that he found his father in a suicide, I guess, in a BMW, which is kind of an interesting way to compare the fact that you've lost a father as well. And then he offers them the entire operation to fuck with him for $1 just to see their reaction. They don't go for it, obviously, but then he offers $187 per share with 50-50 cash stock for the whole thing. Kendall's interested, Roman is not. The Grays are in, but Shiv left. They end up finding Shiv down there. They throw it out to her that he wants the ATN deal. And I'm surprised because Shiv was the one that seemed to be wanting the ATN deal. But after the Merkin news with Sid and all this, she says, "Oh, yeah, throw it in, whatever." So kind of interesting stuff. And then we see negotiations going on, and then boom, they're out. We see the stuff going out on the area there where they're by the fire and all this kind of stuff. And then Kendall and Roman have another meeting with Matsson there after Greg and Tom have tried awkwardly to talk about France with these guys. And Greg has come up to try to talk to the kids and be like, "Quad Squad, right? We're the Quad Squad family." Because Greg, of course, ever the interloper, Greg. And they have even more of a conversation about this situation and negotiate more about this. And then we head to the sauna. And then we'll get to the back half of the last part of the episode here. So, Shannon, these thoughts on all the negotiation stuff that's going on with Matsson and how the kids are reacting to it and how the Grays are reacting to it as well.
I mean, I love that the Gojo employees, they are a reflection of Matsson.
Yeah.
Like they are coming in, they know they are in the power position, and sort of as Tom, I think very aptly said, he's like, you took the bait, you're fattening yourself for the kill. The poking at like, hey man, save some for us. I did love the Hugo jab at the downhill skier.
Yeah.
Those pesky tenths of a second. That was almost a big deal. Like that was just so much fun to watch Fisher Stevens again. Just the everyone from Waystar Royal, everyone's just on their heels.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And watching the Sibs go upstairs with Jerry, with Frank, with Carl, and you see this smug Swedish billionaire with his stupid hood on, being like, oh, you guys are rolling deep. It's just, oh, you outmaneuvered me. Like, oh, you got one on me. Watching how he is consistently keeping them off balance.
Yeah, on purpose. Yes.
With a total disregard for the fact that they lost their dad 2 days ago.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something that I think Logan would probably envy. Like, look at him go. Like, that's the way you do business. That's how you go in and get as much as you can for as little as you want to give. The whole thing about like, oh, no sorries for Lucas. I mean, it's just so brilliantly smug. And watching how he's just like, well, you know, I want that everything for $1. And it's sort of like, oh, yeah. He's like, no, but seriously, I want ATN.
Yeah.
You know, the way that he's able to deliver that news with a sarcastic smile, and watching how they just go back and forth. Like, oh, do you need to check and see if it's okay? Do you need to go ask the village elders? Just so awesome. And you can tell Roman, despite the fact that he pre-grieved in the last episode, you can tell he's really struggling with this, whereas Kendall is doing his best to seem stoic.
Yes.
But Jeremy Strong's stoic choice is Kendall, that he's sort of smiling. He sort of wants to tell you to fuck off, which he does. I mean, the moment when I would be so curious to see the script for this scene when Kendall's saying something and Matsson's like, if I can interrupt you, and he's like, well, I'd rather you not, but you already did, so go ahead. Like, I'm curious how much of that was actually scripted and how much of that was Jeremy Strong in his. Because that was just such a brilliant exchange, and the way that they are kind of talking over each other, it's just, I'm like, I wonder how much of that was in the moment and how much of that was planned. Because it was just so good. Watching them go down into that sort of common area in the grass, and you see Tom just sort of clumsily trying to fit in with Matsson and Oscar and, the rest of the Swedes. I mean, and a couple of times when they're joking around in Swedish, we see in the back the two, Mark and the other guy, just cracking up, knowing they don't speak Swedish. They have no idea. They're just trying to get in with the cool kids.
Yep.
And
it's high school. Yeah, exactly.
It fully is. It is. Life is high school. Life is always the cool group and the group that wants to be in the cool group.
It's true.
Watching them go at each other again and having Matsson say, it's a part shop. Calling your father's legacy a part shop. Good parts, bad brand. And again, watching them go back and forth, it's just it's so much fun to watch.
Yeah.
And you can start to see, I wouldn't go as far to say evil when talking about Matsson, but you can start to see the killer behind his eyes. Like, the more and more serious the negotiations are getting. And it's like, all right, well, yeah, you guys go talk about it. And then immediately they start talking about the sauna with Oscar, getting everyone to go and sweat it out.
Yeah, I love that the Carl and Frank call them a Peking duck. They look like Peking duck.
Peking duck
is hilarious. What I also wanted to hit one more thing. Anybody who's watching us who knows Swedish, please, for the love of God, tell us what they were saying back and forth. I'd love it down in the comments section. Let us know what they were saying, because I'd love a translation of that as well. Another part of this that I think it was interesting, and I want to touch it real quick. When they were doing the negotiation, when they're having the conversation, as you said, the stoic nature of Jeremy Strong. This is how he's trying to negotiate this whole situation. It's fascinating to watch his work as Kendall and what he's doing, and the layers that he's bringing to all of this, I think, are fascinating. You're absolutely right for pointing that out. Let's take a moment. We're going to take a quick beat, and then we're going to jump into the rest of the episode and wrap up our review here right after this.
Boo, 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 do, 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 do.
I do enjoy the theme song. All right, so anyway, so we come back here, and Matsson is introducing Ebba to Shiv here at night now, and they have this discussion later on, Shiv and Matsson, about if the deal is there. We see that Ebba has a little bit of, how can I say this, a little bit of an aloofness, standoffishness with Matsson. Like, she holds her own. She's not someone to mess around with. Then she leaves, and Matsson and Shiv talk about the deal, and he reveals this stuff to Shiv about, you know, giving his blood away and giving her the blood. Did he go too far and all this kind of stuff? And she's like, yeah, maybe shut that down. Don't fire her, but shut that down, because if this deal goes through, the press is going to be all over you. And countering that is a scene with Kendall and Roman where Kendall wants to tank the deal. And Roman is kind of on the fence about it, but then Roman does come around and is like, yeah, let's tank the deal. Kendall gets Greg to come over to call the press and say, you know, leak some stuff about how people are upset and it's not going well and all this kind of stuff. And then he gets, he wants to set up a 4K projection the next day. And the next day they're showing that, I guess, outtakes or dailies of that terrible movie. And then we get them talking about this stuff. And Ebba leaves the screening, which is great. Says she's going to come back at some point. But then Matsson goes out with Kendall and Roman out there. And we get this scene where Matsson is essentially absolutely kneecapping these guys and trying to turn them into children, saying their father would be embarrassed of them, trying to negotiate this kind of stuff, how incompetent they seem. He would have gone for this or that. And then he walks off to go piss. And then we have Roman going God mode. He walks over there and he absolutely, and Kendall tries to stop it, right? Just a cursory stop. He doesn't really physically try to stop him. And Roman comes out there and absolutely eviscerates Matsson. And we, as fans and viewers of the show, we have now found where to put our anger. Where it was Logan before, as you said earlier, it is now Matsson. And the back and forth between him, and he's like, you just fucked yourself. Oh, did I? Let's go. Let's fucking go. So now I'm like, hell yeah, World War III. Let's put it together. Let's have it out. So what did you think of all this with Shiv and Matsson and Ebba, and then later with Kendall, Roman, and Matsson there? Oh, and also we get on the plane, Tom and Shiv. Oh, Tom and Shiv have that weird exchange as well, where Tom flicks her ear after she's insulting his sneakers. And then later on the plane, Tom thinks he's going to be fired, and Shiv's actually going to fire Sid, it looks like. And then they hear about the kill list. Carolina survives, but just about everyone else gets axed. So that's how things end here. What do you think about this whole back half of this episode here, man?
We're watching this very briefly, but we're watching this very, cohesive unit start to splinter. Because Shiv has kind of been left out.
Yes.
So Matsson is reaching out to her, and you see that there's a little bit of a connection. I think Shiv's probably a little charmed by Matsson.
Sure.
He's broad. He's very handsome. This is also a very, very powerful guy.
Yeah.
And she's the daughter of a Titan. And so there is something about that I think she does find a little, not necessarily in a romantic sense, but no. But there's an interest there. You're watching how Kendall wants to tank the deal because Kendall likes being in charge.
Yeah.
And Shiv even says it, like, you've been doing a good job for 24 hours. Kendall wants to be in charge. This ship is built. We can scrap this thing, start over, and we don't know how it's going to turn out. Or I can be on this old ship and try to repair it. But here I'm in charge. Kendall or Roman wants to, because it's personal.
Yeah.
Now he's, we find out he kind of blames Matsson. Like, you're the one, you killed Dad. Like, you drained the life out of him the last 6 months. You made him get on this plane. That is what killed him. So the idea that Kendall's just like, let's tank the deal. And with Roman, it's vindictive. It's just like, all right, you took one of ours. We're going to take one of yours.
Yeah. Can I throw in one more thing too?
Sure.
He's the one that defends the ATN. He wants to keep the ATN because that's It was his father's baby. And so
Right.
he doesn't want to get it. Where Shiv is like easy to throw it in. Kendall's going to throw it in, but it's Roman. So Roman much more trying to preserve the legacy of Logan Roy than any of the three. Yeah, sorry.
Roman is the loyal one.
Yeah,
He's the loyal guy that this is what dad wanted. This is what we need to do. Whereas Kendall might be actually more like his father.
Yeah.
And say, forget about what dad wanted. What would dad do?
Right.
In this situation. That really, really interesting conversation where you find that Matsson is severely compromised in terms of his relationship with Ebba, that she has more than receipts. She literally has his blood.
Yeah.
So any sort of discrediting they try to do, she literally, the smoking gun is in her hands.
Yeah. Yeah.
So watching Shiv be like, you know what, you and I, we get each other, but for you to work, you need to listen to someone. Yeah. I can informally do this. I forgot to mention the whole Tom Shiv, where she starts kicking dirt on his very, very white sneakers, and then he freaking flicks her in the ear.
Dude. I don't care what anyone says. That's an assault, man. Yeah.
Calls her ears thick and chewy like barnacle meat. We see Tom start to stand up for himself a little bit more. And I think it's interesting that now is this a ruse that Shiv is doing by saying to Tom, like, Sid's toast. You can do it. It looks like maybe there's a thawing of relations there, or is she playing a longer game at this point, knowing that she has a connection with Matsson? The scene on the mountain.
She asked him to dinner. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see. Yeah.
The scene on the mountain where Matsson name drops Hanna-Barbera, which I was just like, apparently Scooby-Doo and Yogi Bear are very popular in Sweden.
He calls them a tribute band. Oh, dude. Oof.
He has such great digs.
Mm-hmm.
And it's when he says your father would be embarrassed of you, that you see that, the camera hangs on Kieran Culkin for just a second, and he's trying to let it go because he knows that's the smart move, that for them to actually successfully tank this deal, Matsson, as they said, needs to think it was his idea. And it's like, I can't do it. Come in, both barrels, bang, 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 calls him an inhuman dog man. And we see that the stand that Roman is taking is really affecting Matsson. Again, you see those killer eyes where he says, easy, brother. Like, that's the first time he's been like, all right, we're not playing anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't want to, like, you hit me too hard.
Yeah.
So knowing that as when he says, did you hear what your little brother and Roman? Yeah, did you hear what I said? Did you hear what I said? I'm just going to say it's a negotiating tactic. Maybe it is, but it's not. he calls him, a see you next Tuesday. Yeah. I mean, it just such powerful work. Yeah. And as they get on the plane, you find out that Matsson has upped the price.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone is like, guys, great job. And Matsson knowing, like, okay, yes, I am going to buy your company. I'm going to get you in a position where you have to sell.
Yeah.
Maybe that price is going to drop. Maybe some more stuff is going to happen. But that's what I know you don't want. So that's what I want.
Right. And so, and he sees through the kids, right? When they're playing that terrible movie and they're releasing those articles, because he reads the news pieces and he calls them out. And he says, you guys are trying to tank the deal. So he knows. And by the way, this is really interesting, Shannon, because we're having this conversation today and news just broke a few minutes ago that Tucker Carlson has been fired by Fox News. The show is over. They announced and said that his last show was Friday. And what did he say about ATM in this episode, Matsson? He said about ATM, this network plan, old men screaming, bulging, dick veins, whatever, it's not a long-term solution. You need to go Bloomberg Gray. And look, right today on the heels of this, what a perfect timing, insane perfect timing, proving his point to a degree about the situation, how untenable this kind of a business plan is for a network in America. So just fascinating to see that on the heels of that news dropping this morning. So he's not wrong with some of his instincts, but the way he goes about it, are we setting ourselves up with a Godzilla versus King Kong type of situation for the next 5 episodes, Shannon? Do you think this is going to be the battle? And will Shiv find herself in between. Which side will she go on in this situation? What do you think we've got lined up here?
I mean, I think there are definitely going to be shifting alliances because that's what the show has done successfully for 4 seasons. Is you think someone's on your side, then you find out, nope, they got angry about this thing you did. Now they're switching sides.
Yeah.
I feel like I feel like that's probably what has to happen. And I had read that in the lead up to this season, like based off of the marketing material, like some of the creative team said, like, yeah, you can, when you get to the end of the season, you'll get why we put certain people next to others. And like even this graphic that you have on behind us right now, we see that, what is it? Kendall and Tom, and I can't remember I don't know if it's Connor is on the other side. And on the opposing side is Roman, Shiv, and maybe Greg. So it's really, really fascinating to see how this is all going to play out. And poor Connor.
Yeah, I was just going to say,
who we didn't really talk about.
Yeah, let's go ahead, Shannon.
You know, Marcia's coming in as the spouse of the deceased and making certain requests that Connor thinks, maybe this isn't a good idea. I'll throw my weight around, but it can't be my fault if it goes south either. And then we hear Willa really, I feel like this is the first time we've really heard Willa on Connor's side when she says, don't let them make fun of you. Like, oh my gosh, it's like, okay, maybe this is going to be the strongest bond coming out of this show is Connor and the former call girl.
Yeah. Well, he's because they're married now. So because they're married now, there's a natural instinct to defend your husband or your wife or whatever you. So in that moment, it's the first time, you're right, where she's kind of been vocal about him standing up for himself. Even when the death and all the things they did threatened to ruin the wedding, she was open to calling it off or not calling it off. She's been very malleable in that way. But in this moment, she says, stand up for yourself, encourage, don't push back on those guys. Don't let them make fun of you. So you're seeing Willa become a champion, essentially a political wife for this guy, because you've got to have someone strong who's got your back when you're going for political office, a significant other who's strong behind you. So clearly that's the situation there. And then, the idea that he wants to kind of do things without any kind of blame, that's just perfect Connor on so many levels. But Marcia coming in is really interesting, wanting to burying him in a kilt. People may not remember this, but like he was initially Canadian in the first season, and then they changed his origin to being Scottish through some kind of nefarious stuff in the background, some nebulous stuff. And Brian Cox spoke about this when in that Succession podcast after he died. On that Succession podcast episode, he talks about the fact that Armstrong changed his heritage, and he had pitched his heritage being Scottish, but McKay was for it because McKay is Scottish. But Armstrong was against it. And then behind his back, he changed his heritage to Scottish going into the second season. So Cox was super pissed about that for sure. Because he's like, a Canadian is not a Scottish person. I would have done the first season completely differently. So very funny stuff. So the fact that Marcia wants to bury him in a kilt, I think is a little bit of a nod to the fact that he's Scottish. Do you get it? He's Scottish. So I like that that's an element here. All right, let's wrap up because I know we gotta get on out of here. Shannon, your final thoughts about this episode, and I know we all kind of mentioned already where we think it's going, but do you have any surprises or any predictions that you think we might see in the next 5 episodes are going to surprise us?
I mean, there's definitely predictions that I don't want to happen, and I don't want the kids to turn on each other. But I think that is highly, highly likely. Now, who's going to do the turning first? Who knows? It sure seems like Kendall. But I hope that's not what happens. I'm hoping for a happy ending here, Johnny.
What? There's no way. I don't know.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah, I thought this was a fantastic episode. We're back on track now, even more so, and looking forward to it. And look, Brian Cox, thank you for your service. But now I'm focused on Matsson and what's going to happen here with him. And I will say this, watch out for Greg. That's all I'm going to put that out there. Watch out for Greg. Now that Kendall has employed Greg to leak information, he can tell Shiv that and cause the fracture here in this relationship. So Greg is a dangerous person to get on your side because that guy loves to sink ships with his loose lips. Let me put that out there. So we'll see. And the Tom thing also is kind of up in the air. Will he side with Shiv at a critical moment, or will he stab her in the back for his own self-preservation? I think that's the Kendall Roman breakup is coming, But those other ones are more of kind of up in the air. We'll see what happens, and could be Shiv at the end of the day in control of it all. We shall see. All right, well, there you go. That's our spoiler review for episode 5 of Succession Kill List. Thank you all so much for joining us. We'd appreciate your questions, thoughts, and comments down below. Please remember to subscribe to the channel as well. What did we miss? Did we miss anything? Did we not hit something hard enough? Let us know. What's your impressions of the episode? Where do you think things are going? Let us know down there in the comment section below. Hit a like on this video, share it on your social media as well. And as I said, the biggest thing, subscribe. I'm trying to get to my own 192. That's 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year. I appreciate you all helping me do that. Shannon, another fun show. Please let people know where they can find you.
Yeah, you can follow on social media, on Twitter at Shannon_McClung, on Instagram at Shannon the Geek Buddy, and you can see me every week co-hosting the Geek Buddies with Mr. Rocha and Mr. Michael Vogel.
That's for sure. Please do that. All right, y'all take care of yourselves. Be well. We'll talk to you next time with another brand new spoiler review of Succession here on the Outlaw Nation. Peace.